Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be mixing my own potting mix, and I would love to share with you guys the types of things that go into this mix. As you know, good potting mix can run pretty expensively, especially if you are looking to fill up a large space. A basic potting mix is actually really easy to make, and just with 3 to 4 ingredients, you can make something that would suit most of your plants and fruits and vegetables. And then I will show you the other kinds of minerals and fertilizers that I like to add into it. Those other stuff, I consider those as the extras, the things if you have a larger budget to spend, or depending on particular plants you're growing them in. But just with the 3 to 4 ingredients will definitely get you started growing beautiful, healthy vegetables and plants. And it's also really great for topping off your beds, or starting off a new section, or doing your transplants in a container garden. To make a super basic potting mix, there's really just 3 ingredients. The first one is compost. Of course, that gives your plants nutrients. From compost, you can either buy at a nursery, or maybe even your city sometimes would have compost, or even free compost to give away. Or of course, you can make your own compost, which I have been doing the Bokashi composting. I love that method. It's just the fastest way for me to get those composts out in the garden. If you guys want to learn more about that, I will put the link down below for you. The second component that's required would be something that helps to retain water, and that's either your peat moss or your cocoa coir. Peat moss is not the most sustainable product, so I prefer the coconut coir, which is actually the husk of the coconut. This is the cocoa coir that I have. Usually they come in like a block that's really dry, hard block, and you just need to hydrate it with water, and then it just really acts like a sponge. It'll soak up all that water, and it will help retain the moisture in the soil for your vegetables. So right here I got some cocoa coir that's mixed with perlite, and that's the third thing that I want to get to. Now, perlite is something for aeration. Perlite is made from expanded volcanic rocks, and it is basically something that helps to aerate your soil, so you have better drainage. Just like its name, perlite is extremely lightweight, and it floats in water too. That is why it doesn't really absorb water as well as vermiculite. It's also extremely dusty and powdery to work with. Make sure you're not breathing it in. Wet it a bit with water before you work with it. So this is vermiculite. The biggest difference between the vermiculite and the perlite is that vermiculite, the water retention is a lot better than perlite, and also adds aeration. So if you're growing something that likes well-drained soil but also requires the soil to stay moist, vermiculite is definitely a good one to mix into your soil. It feels kind of like sand, but it's a lot lighter than sand. It is also made from expanded volcanic rocks, whereas perlite is more like you see in a lot of like your potting mix for cacti, because it doesn't retain that much moisture, but they both act as a drainage. And then the third one that's part of the drainage group, I would call it, is sand. Now, sand is heavier, but it is the cheapest of the 3, and sand adds really good aeration. The only thing is that it is very heavy. So for me, putting it in an elevated raised bed, I don't want the raised bed to hold too much weight, especially because I picked these ones up used. So I'm just going to add a little bit of sand in there, but mainly I'm going to be using perlite and vermiculite as for drainage. Going back to the cocoa coir, this bag that I have comes with some perlite, but usually when you're making your own soil mix, you like to get every ingredient individually, so you know exactly how much goes in there. And then the fourth one I want to add into this is some worm castings. I have vermicompost here, so I make my own, or my worms make our own worm castings, but you can also purchase them at your local nurseries. In fact, everything that I've mentioned, that I will be mentioning in this video, guys, they are usually available at your local nurseries, or you can pick it up on Amazon, which I will put down some links for you guys in the description box. Worm castings is really great in your potting mix because it adds some beneficial bacteria. After all, worm castings is a form of compost, and you know how compost can be very beneficial to our garden. This is Fox Farm Ocean Forest potting mix, my favorite potting mix so far. I use it a lot in my transplants, and I mix some other things in it as well. But if you're not confident in making 100% on your own, the potting mix, by adding a store-bought or pre-made potting mix, I think that would help ensure new gardeners some confidence in making their potting mixes. All right, let's get started. This is some lovely compost. Currently, I don't have any compost that I made here. These ones actually came from John Kohler over at Growing Your Greens. You guys should definitely check out his channel. He's got over like 2,000 of videos on his channel or something crazy like that. So if all this stuff is a bit dry, you can add some water to it. You don't need everything to be exact, it's just an approximate. Next, I'm going to need that filler that helps to retain water. This is coconut coir that I'm using. And it already has some perlite. That tells me I wouldn't have to add as much perlite in my mix later. Moving on to the third. I'm actually going to be growing some sweet potatoes. The third one will be for aeration, for drainage. This is vermiculite. So when I said 1 part each, I meant 1 part in each component or category. So you got your compost as 1 part compost, 1 part this filler, which is the coconut coir, and then the aeration part, if that's also in 1 part. And if you want to mix things up like vermiculite, sand, and perlite, which is what I'll be doing here, they would all be, I guess, divided amongst that 1 part. So I won't be using as much of each. So keep in mind that the finer the grain is, the less you actually need to scoop. All right, I'm going to add some sand into this because I'm planting sweet potatoes. And usually sweet potatoes like about like 40% sand in there. Really good aeration and drainage. And because I'm putting sand in here as well for drainage, I would not have to put as much vermiculite and perlite. Probably more defined if I did this. This would be the cheapest way to add drainage for your soil. Sand is finer than vermiculite and perlite. I don't have to add as much of it in there. That is it. These are the 3 very basic things that it's required for you to make a basic potting mix. But then I'm going to add the 4th thing here, which is the worm castings. You only need about 1/4 of this in the mix, but I'm going to use 1 part of worm castings in mine because there's never too much good bacteria, if you asked me, and I just kind of have quite a bit available right now. Here are the more dried up worm castings. They're kind of clumping up a little bit. If you want, you can sift through it and just get the really fine worm castings, but I don't think my plants would mind since I'm going to be putting in some pretty mature transplants. So let's just supercharge my raised bed. The most important thing to having good water retention in the garden would start from the soil. Now your soil, such as like your worm castings and the coco coir or peat moss and your compost, all of these would help retain water really well. This is the very basic ingredients for making your own potting mix, guys. All right, let's get mixing. It may look like I'm adding a lot of water, but all the ingredients I just put in really holds water well. It's like, where did all the water go? What's considered a good moisture content? Well, obviously not soaking wet, and if you give it a squeeze, nothing would drain out of your hands. If there's water draining out of your hands, that's way too wet, and if it's too dusty, obviously that is too dry. And then what's the perfect consistency? They call it like the brownie mix. So you just kind of clump it up with your hands and it forms, but it's easy to crumble. So if you're not going to be adding any fertilizers in, I think a very cost-effective way to do it is to use some potting mix. That would also be a good way to stretch your ingredients or your materials. And this is just a little bit I got left. So you can put 1 or 2 parts of that soil in the potting mix that you purchase already have some of the fertilizers in there. So if you're looking for a more cost-effective way to do your own mix, you can just, you know, pick up a bag or two of the potting mixes depending on how much soil you're making. And then you can add that rather than buying individual fertilizers. Even though having a basic potting mix will get your plants growing, but I highly recommend choosing at least one fertilizer to go in there as a slowly feeding your plants. The next fertilizer I'll be adding is the Gard 444. It is a balanced fertilizer. So that's something very general. You can read the instructions on the labels, but what I like to do is just basically apply a super light layer of it on top and mix it in. Let's move on to mineralizing. I highly recommend mineralizing because a lot of minerals we cannot just take in, you know, like eating it, right? Such as rock dust. Here I got some azomite rock dust. This is a mineral, up to 70 different types of trace minerals in here. And azomite is derived from, it's a rock dust derived from volcanic ash. And, you know, obviously I cannot just, you know, open this lid and take this and put it in my mouth and expect that I can get nutrients out of it, right? So in order to extract the nutrients, we'd have to take it through the plants. So you don't need a whole lot. Just kind of lightly sprinkle it over your soil. The rock dust I'm using is so fine. If you're using something similar, make sure you're wearing a mask, or just don't breathe, or don't do it on a windy day. The next thing I'll be putting in is the seaweed. It comes with a little scooper. The seaweed, again, is for the trace minerals. And I do think that when you're putting trace minerals in, it helps the plants to grow better, grow bigger, healthier. And the best part about it is that it really helps to improve the taste, the quality of your food. Finally, for the minerals, I got the green sand. Green sand is derived from the ocean floor. Again, it's a type of minerals. You only need a little bit of it. And I just put like a couple tablespoons of it. Finally, I am adding some humic acids. I have seen some amazing turnaround with my plants using the liquid solution to this, which is another product that I really love. But for mixing into the soil, humic acid is basically like your ancient decomposed organic matter. So it is super concentrated. This really would help to feed your microbes and increase that soil health, and for your plants to uptake nutrients better and to grow a very strong root system. As you can see, this is such an, actually I think this is essential if you asked me. And a little bit goes a long way. If you guys want to learn more about humic acid, I have another video that kind of goes more in depth about the benefits of using humic acid. I will point you guys to that in the description box below. This is looking like a really nice potting mix. And I think this is a potting mix that's even better than any that I could find on the market. Look at this. It holds and it crumbles. Oh my God! I just dropped it. This is what happens when you're growing in a small space. Gotta scoop this up. Drama in the garden. All right, it's going in. Dump. All right, smooth it out. Smooth it out. Thank you guys for joining me out here today. Let me know in the comments below, is there like a particular kind of fertilizer or things you love to add to your garden or to your plants and soil? Let me know. That's it, you guys. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this content, and don't forget to hit the bell button for updates. If you're looking for plant seeds and garden supplies, be sure to go check out my website. It's a really great way to support this channel, and I really do appreciate it so much. I will leave that link as well as everything else that I've mentioned in this video in the description box below. Thank you guys. I'll see you right back here in the next video. Bye.